Hello, bookworms. Welcome to The Best Book Ever, the podcast where we talk about your favorite books. I'm your host, Julie Strauss, and today I'm so pleased to talk to Lindsey Pogue. Lindsey is a best-selling post-apocalyptic and romance author, but more important than that, according to her, she's a taco-loving nature girl who enjoys a nice cold gin lemonade on a warm summer night. So, hi, she's practically my twin, and yes, we discussed gin during our chat, obviously. Lindsey lives in Northern California with her own leading man and their rescue cat, Beast. Beast was in pretty bad shape the day we talked, and Lindsey messaged me from the vet that she might have to cancel. But I'm pleased to report that the Beast has bounced back, and we were able to have a wide-ranging talk about books and travel and gin, and why The Heretic Queen by Michelle Moran is the best book ever. If you're looking for a way to help support this podcast that is free and takes up very little of your time, why not leave a review on whatever podcatcher you use? Through some sort of magical algorithm system that I don't fully understand, if a podcast has reviews, it's suggested to new listeners more often. So do it right now. Just scroll down on your phone and hit the Leave a Review button. It'll take just a few seconds of your time, and it really helps me out. I'm super grateful for your support. Now, back to the show. Hi, Lindsey. Welcome to the Best Book Ever podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Lindsey, you know this is a podcast about books for readers.
Yes.
And I really, really want to talk to you about your favorite book, but we're going to start by talking about some books you've written. And I have a really, really specific question for you.
Okay.
And that is this. Your Savage North series is a 6-book sci-fi series. I'm going to quote it to you because I'm not sure if you know exactly what you've done here. About 6 strangers who face the horrors of a virus-ravaged world. Yes. I'm going to say that again. A virus-ravaged world. And as I did a deeper dive here, the first book came out May 2019, and the final one came out in November 2020. Is this correct?
Yes.
What in the hell is this sorcery? Is what I want to ask you.
It's really funny because I know people have mixed feelings, obviously, about it right now because, what's going on in the world. And this is actually a spinoff of a series that was created in actually 2012. So with following different people, different part of the world. And so, I don't know. It's obviously too timely. But it's been out. I've been writing it for a while, the whole world itself. It's called The Ending World. So clearly, what an apt name, right? Oh my gosh.
Okay. So when you started this branch of the series, we were not even May 2019. Nope. We were not even discussing viruses at that time. So you had no idea what was coming. You weren't anticipating a rush on post-apocalyptic fiction.
No, but what's really funny is I did a lot of research, trying to figure out, this series specifically, these people have to survive in a world that is, it's a lot worse than what we're going through now, but it's kind of funny in a way because I did a lot of research of how to what would happen with infrastructure and, specifically these people are in Alaska. So what would happen to them if, society completely crumbled around them, that sort of thing. And it was so funny though, because as I'm thinking about how I wrote this story, there's a lot of things I'm like, oh man, I'm glad I got that right. Of things that we're thinking about now or what we're having to do now. But then there are other things I'm like, oh, I should have had him wearing a mask in that scene. You know what I mean? I was things that I also would do a little bit differently. It is very strange to have written a series about a pandemic, global. Obviously it ends a lot worse. And the people who survive are changed in a way that they're either they're not mentally sound anymore, or they are they think that they're normal, quote unquote, until they start kind of experiencing things that are very abnormal, kind of X many things.
What I have noticed The books that you publish tend to, it seems like they really span several genres. And I spent the afternoon going through your blog, and I was reading different book reviews you've posted and your lists of favorite books. And I've noticed that you've got a really wide range of books that you read. Is there anything you don't read?
I don't read a lot of nonfiction. And I don't really know if there's a reason for that. It's not to say that I don't ever, but I don't a lot. But yeah, I mean, it helps too because I'm in a book club. And so we all kind of pick different things. So that kind of helps me get out of my bubble. But I read a lot of things, but I love history. I love romance, or some sort of a love story. And I like dystopian stuff. And it's funny because I don't read a lot of post-apocalyptic books, which is kind of weird. But I love dystopian. So I don't know. I'm now that you're asking me, I'm thinking, maybe I just really like to kind of get lost in the fiction stuff. That must be why. I do enjoy listening and reading biographies or memoirs that are actually told by the people who actually, it's their story. I listened to Nick Offerman. He's really funny. He's really fun to listen to. I think I really like more of the comedy stuff. But yeah, so not too often though.
I think I have pushed this book at least 20 times on this podcast, but I listened to Bruce Springsteen's autobiography on audio, and I'm only a casual fan. And oh my God, it is the best audiobook I have ever listened to. It is
really
so good. Yes, he is.
Is he the narrator?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I'll have to write that down.
So good. Yeah, I highly recommend it if that's your jam.
I'm really into audiobooks, and sometimes I don't really. Sometimes I need a break from the make-believe world. So definitely I'll check it out and I always need good recommendations to offer up for my book club choice for the for the month. So
were you always a reader? Did you grow up in a reading family and pick it up young?
I would say no. I liked reading. In fact, I used to make my sister, she's 2.5 years younger. I used to make her we would sit in the garage. I would make this little school room. And I remember I would get my little, elementary chapter book out, and I would pretend I was the teacher, and I would read to her all the time and stuff. And I would make her listen. But I wouldn't say I don't necessarily remember my mom reading to us at night or anything like that. My dad is a big sci-fi reader, Star Wars and all that kind of thing. My mom is she's a hippie girl child, so she's always reading if anything, I probably get my love of fantasy and stuff from her because she's fairies and whatever. But yeah, so not a lot of memories as far as reading goes, but I remember that I liked reading to my sister out loud, which is really funny because I'm dyslexic and it's actually hard for me to read out loud. And so, but I don't know, maybe it was a challenging thing for me, or maybe it's because she's my sister and I was I don't care, you're going to listen and I don't care how bad I sound, but I'm going to read to you and I'm going to teach you a lesson.
So not having a big reading culture young, and then also, overcoming dyslexia, what led you into a reading and writing life?
When I was little, I had my best friend was an artist. And so she was always drawing pictures. And then I would always write the little descriptions for the books, So that was one of the fun things we would do on the weekends or whatever. We would make, I was in elementary school. We were making books, I remember we wrote a book about birds, it's totally random.
Do you still have those books?
Pet stores. I have the birds one. I don't have the pet store one anymore, but yeah, we used to do silly stuff. So I used to write doing that that way. But then through high school, high school is really rough. We all have a lot of crap going on when we're growing up and stuff. And I had some really dark times. And I feel like writing for me just was super helpful. And I always wanted to be a writer, but I never thought well, I'm sure everyone says that, like, you never really think that you're going to do it or that you can. And what really got me back into reading when I was in high school, there was a teacher. She, I think because I was dyslexic, it wasn't something that I enjoyed a lot, especially having to stand up and read in front of the class or like, that sort of thing. That was always really kind of daunting for me. And so I remember that in high school, I had this teacher, and she brought out Pride and Prejudice, and she made it so fun to read that book. And like, she just got so excited about it. And we watched like, the BBC version of it, and the 1996 BBC version of it. It was just like, I was just like enthralled, and I was like, I love this book now, and so I kind of started reading more, because of her. And then I started, I think that helped cultivate more writing for me as well, because then I was like, I want to write a book like that. I want to be like Jane Austen.
How did you find this book that we're discussing today, The Heretic Queen?
Yeah. So I used to work at a bookstore. Well, I used to do a lot of things, but I was an event manager for 5 years, and it was really hard work. And I kind of hated it towards the end. And it probably didn't help that I was getting my master's degree during that as well. And in history and culture, which plays into this because I was like just super burned out. And so what I did is I quit my job, and I was like, I've been saving money. I'm going to travel, and I can't, but I need to have like some sort of a job, I need to have something to come back to. So I started working at the bookstore, and it was just, first of all, just working in a bookstore is so cool. It's so cool, especially for people like us who love books and who can just appreciate them, and so when I would travel and come back, and I always had all these books that were waiting for me. Well, it's really cool because we get ARCs, right? When you work at a bookstore, I'm sure you know that. So this wasn't an ARC, but because it got me more into reading, I started like really looking at all the books we had on the shelves. And I was like, well, what do I want to read next? And because what you can do, or at least I don't know if you could do this to other places, but we could check out a book. As long as we didn't damage it or whatever, we could check out a book and like read it at work or whatever. And so,
how cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. It's really, really cool. So I would check, I saw the cover, and because I'm a history major, I was like, oh, the cover for the first book in the series actually just like grabbed my attention. And so I started reading it, and I absolutely loved it. And that's when that was the first time I had ever read historical fiction and fell in love with it. Because it's one thing to love history and learn about it and write essays on it and, all of that, but to read it in a way that it's not a textbook, and that it's just like this amazing, vibrant, beautiful story that puts you in that time and place with those people. It really struck a chord with me. And so then I went on to read the next book, which is this one that we're going to, The Heretic Queen, which I loved even more. And so this in particular, I feel like this book, this author, like totally spurred like a whole other level of passion for reading for me. And I think that's why, I think because of her is probably why like my dream is to just one day when I can just write about whatever I want. And I know I can do that now, but I also, I have a lot of series that I have to wrap up, and, there's, I have some, things on the to-do list that I have to get done first, but I would just I want to write books that are just, they're steeped in history, but they're also like, I don't want to have to, I want to be able to have fun with them too, And so I really like that she takes these parts of history that so much about, like, and I guess we haven't really talked about what it is, but this is Egyptian. But she takes these parts of history that there isn't that much information about it. And then she kind of puts the pieces together in a way that makes sense based on her research. And then it's like this whole world comes to life. And I just think that's so cool.
So can you tell us what this one specifically is about?
Yeah. So, So the first book in the series, the only reason why I'm bringing that up is because this takes place after that. So the first book in the series is about Nefertiti and her reign as queen of Egypt. And so This book, The Heretic Queen, is the second one in the collection, and it takes place years later, but it is the niece of Nefertiti. And the reason why they call her the Heretic Queen is because her aunt, Nefertiti, was known as the Heretic Queen because of how much her and her husband changed everything about Egypt when they were ruling. Egyptians went after they were gone. They tore down all of the monuments and the palaces and the temples and everything they created during their reign because it was just blasphemy to them, right? So now essentially this is a story about a young girl who is still a princess because of her family line and who she's related to. So she does have the royal seal, but she's also comes from a heretic a line of heretics. So I love the story because it's a love story. It's about her and Ramses II and how they were childhood friends growing up, and I don't know, all the mystery and intrigue and all the people in court who didn't want her, as part of the heretic line to have anything to do with Ramses and the family.
The whole notion of palace intrigue is always one of my favorite subjects to read about. But the thing that stunned me about this book is every couple of chapters I would go, oh my God, she's 15.
I know.
Everything is happening. There are marriages and wars, and the decisions are being made by children. It just boggled my mind how young all the players in this chess game were.
I know. And it's so hard too, because there's some characters and you're just like, oh my gosh, you just want to slap them around. But then you're like, this poor girl, like I'm thinking about Iset, or I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but it's like, she's so horrible, but at the same time, she's also so lost and people are using her as a pawn. And I just love how, as an author in general, she can put you like you're there. Like she just describes everything. You just feel like you are walking the halls in an Egyptian palace. It's really cool.
Yeah, as with Song of Achilles, this is a book I would push on people who would say things like, I don't like reading historical fiction. I don't like that time period. And I would say I would almost say forget the genre name. Just read this for the story because it is such a well-told story.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, there's like everything in there. There's so much, like you're saying, palace intrigue, but just you never know like what horrible thing somebody's going to do next. It all is just really, there's so many layers. It's so rich. It's like a tapestry.
Now, Michelle Moran, the author of Heretic Queen, writes a lot of historical fiction. And I saw some Tudor England books. Have you read any of her other work?
Yeah, I've read most of them. I read Madame Tussauds and I have The Second Empress on my shelf. I have not read that one yet. I don't know why. I've had it for like 10 years. It's so silly. It's coming after the Cleopatra's Daughter. I read, there was one about a warrior queen or something like that. And that I don't even know what era that takes place, but I think it takes place in India somewhere. But that was a really good one.
I'm always thrilled to find an author who now I'm excited to read everything of hers. And I'm super excited for someone like her because knowing her skill with the story, it's exciting to think, I wonder where she's going to turn her eye next. I can't wait to see. And I kind of feel like anything she writes, I'm going to go, sure. Yeah. The Wild West. Absolutely. Bring it. I want to read it.
I know, right? At least she doesn't write series, right? Like actual connected books that you have to read each one, because then that would just be really horrible. I'd be so sad all the time.
Right. And we should say that, I do think we should make that clear that even though this is the second in supposedly a series, I had no problems at all.
Yeah, no, it's just a collection. I think because they all take place so far apart. She just calls it the Royal Collection, but
So what prompted you to start I'm going to veer a little bit here. Okay. What prompted you to start your podcast?
So no shelf control. It's books, booze, and banter. I always, if it's a late enough recording, definitely try and have a cocktail when we're recording. It always makes it a little more fun. But honestly, we have authors on. I have a co-host, Lindsey Fairley, and she's actually the one that I started writing with in 2012. So we've kind of been on this, roller coaster of a journey together. We started it probably for a similar reason why you might have, is because we just wanted to do something fun too. Like, not just for me anyway, my whole thing was, one day I was just sitting around and I was like, I want to talk to somebody who likes books as much as I do. And I want to just drink and I just want to have fun. And I was like, wouldn't it be fun? I have so many author friends that I talk to, but I don't really we don't talk about fun. Like, we talk about book stuff and promos and, whatever, but we don't really sit down and chat and get to know them and, get to ask questions. And that's something that I really wanted to do. And so I asked Lindsey Fairley if she wanted to have fun with me, and we figured it out. I'm definitely an introvert, but I'm also a people person. Like, I really I like getting to know people, and I like having relationships with people, not just like an email relationship, so it's just kind of a nice little extra fun thing to look forward to twice a month. So
when you read for the podcast, are you reading the books of the guest who visits you, or are you reading books that they tell you that they love?
Yeah. So we read the books that they write. So if you came on, I would be like, all right, Julie, what is your favorite book that you've written, or one that you're most excited about that's coming out, or something? And then I'll get a copy, or I'll listen on audio, or, however it works. And then I always have, as a fellow author and as a reader, I have both reader and author questions, right? So it's just fun for me to pick your brain and figure out, like, well, what were you thinking? Like, why would you, like, in a good way, what were you thinking when you were creating this world? Or, you usually write these types of books, but this one has just really stood out as different. And in a way, it kind of helps put some personality into a book too. You get to know these authors, and you just you're reading the words that they wrote. It takes a whole other kind of level to these books when you're just sitting there reading them. It's not like, oh, it's just some author that has no face, not just reading another book. I'm reading Julie's book.
Has anything really surprised you? Have you ever met a writer who wrote a book that you thought the writer would be a certain way, and then it turned out they were completely different than you would have expected?
I wouldn't say that. I think only because I usually, before I actually see, when we do these recordings, I chat with them a lot about just getting things set up, or some of them I already know. So I haven't been super surprised as far as personalities very much, but I will say that I have been very surprised about process, because you have these authors who write these very intricate, amazing stories. So Casey L. Bond came on, and she writes YA kind of fantasy, it feels very kind of, the book we were talking about specifically felt very kind of Viking-esque, and she had all these characters, and she had all this lore, and all of these aspects that are of Norse mythology and history that she kind of wove into her little fantasy world. She does not do any sort of outlining. She doesn't track any, I'm like, how do you keep track of all of these things? For me, that's the really interesting stuff, because my brain does not work that way.
Oh.
She just sits down and writes. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Do you have a specific cocktail that you have, or is it just whatever you're in the mood for?
It depends. If it's summer, I generally have something with gin.
You are my girl.
If it's usually with these, more kind of wintry nights, I do something with whiskey. But I love bubbles, and I love red wine. I mean, it just kind of depends on the day, I guess. But I would say gin cocktails are my favorite, though. I love a good South Side and a frosted glass. I don't know if you've ever had one of those. But so it's lemon juice, cucumber, mint, and gin. It's really good.
Oh my God, that sounds perfect.
It's really good. Yeah. And then you put in, my husband, he actually makes them for me. I'm not going to lie. I'm horrible making cocktails, but he puts in, you're supposed to put in a simple syrup, but I just do, I don't really like super sweet stuff. So he'll do just a little bit of agave nectar or something like that for me, but it's so good. I definitely recommend it. Give it a whirl.
I am giving it a whirl tonight. I have all of those ingredients, and gin cocktails are my favorite. And also, I never do sweet cocktails. I never like them. So I'll just skip the sweet parts and I'll just put in, oh my God, it sounds so good.
Yeah, no, I think you'll like it. If you have a frosted glass, even better.
What do you do? Like a highball or like a champagne coupe?
For I don't know what this says about me, but I have in the freezer, well, along with a couple pint glasses, for the husband, for his beers, his cold beers. I have like one of those like glass blown like margarita glasses.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I use one of those. I mean, technically, I guess it could be a martini. It's way bigger than a martini glass. So yeah, I would say it's probably more like a margarita glass. But anyway, I have one of those in there, and so that's where it lives. So after it's washed, it goes back in there. It's always there. It's always cold. Yeah.
So Lindsey, tell me what you're reading these days. What's on your nightstand these days?
Well, I am reading Nefertiti, like I was saying, for a paperback. And I also have you ever read, it's YA, dystopian YA, but Veronica Rossi, she's a YA author, and I found her when I was working at the bookstore as well. I actually met her. She's really nice. And so I kind of got hooked on her books. So I'm rereading again. Apparently I'm like, when it comes to paperbacks, I'm definitely a big rereader. Under the Never Sky is on there. Now that I'm reading, going back to my Egypt roots here, it's collecting a little bit of dust at the moment, but yeah, I have quite the stack there. And then I'm listening to lore on Audible, which I need to see. I think the author's name is, I'm probably going to say it wrong, but Adriana Bracken or something like that. Anyway, I just started it, but it's really, really good. The narrator's amazing. Yeah, her name is Alexandra Bracken. So anyway, but that's mythology too. So obviously I'm on like this kick right now. And Medusa is on the cover. So I don't know. I'm excited though. Good. Yeah. So I'm listening to that, and ebook. I am actually reading a Megan Quinn romance right now called The Locker Room. It's a baseball romance, so I'm excited. I love me some sports romance too. So,
do you always have one book going on each format?
I guess I do actually. Well, because I feel like, because usually what happens when we have authors on the podcast, it's usually an ebook that I'm reading. So I always have something on there. Right now, actually, none of these books are for the podcast, but that's how I tend to read. So for podcasts, I always have some sort of ebook open on my phone, but then I always have an audiobook because I can do like admin stuff in the office while I'm, listening to an audiobook. So, I mean, I guess technically I should be listening to all the podcasts that authors are supposed to be listening to for like marketing and blah, blah, but that's like not fun. So I listened that way. And then, the paperback actually is a newer thing for me. I kind of promised myself at the end of this last year, Lindsey, if you're going to have all of these books, like I have so many books I've never even read. I have so many books. If I'm going to have all these books, I have to start reading them. And so I'm really trying. The problem is I'm rereading books that I've already read. I don't know if that's helpful, but I'm working on it. It's a problem. But yeah, I'm really trying to not feel guilty of taking over the house with books when I never read the paperbacks. So it's a problem I sympathize with. I think a lot of my listeners sympathize with as well. Yeah. Book lovers tend to be book hoarders. Yep. I know I have allergies, and I'm like, okay, Lindsey, the more you clutter books on your nightstand, the worse your allergies. Like, everything that can collect dust does not need to be by your face, but I can't help it.
Well, Lindsey, why don't you tell our listeners all the places where they can find you and your work and your podcast?
Yeah. So, I mean, a kind of a catch-all for me is my website, lindseypogue.com. And I'm on Facebook, author Lindsey Pogue, and Instagram, author Lindsey. I try to keep it as consistent as possible. But yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. I have not taken on the TikTok yet. I know that's like a thing now, but I'm not there yet, but maybe one day. But yeah, so like I said, Facebook, Instagram, but all my information, everywhere you can find me, is on my website. So lindseypogue.com. And also the podcast is on there too. Sorry. Yeah. The podcast is on there as well. So you can check that out.
Well, I want to thank you for introducing me to this book. I absolutely loved it. I cannot wait to read Nefertiti. And I want to thank you for joining me today. It has been so fun talking to you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And I will definitely, I want you to come on our podcast too. So hopefully we'll be chatting there too.
Books and booze, my two favorite things.
Yeah. With the South Side in your hand.
Thanks for listening, bookworms. For more information on this episode and links to all the books we discussed, please go to our website, bestbookeverpodcast.com, or follow the podcast on Instagram at bestbookeverpodcast. I'm your host, Julie Strauss, and you can find me everywhere as Julie Wrote a Book. Remember, when you're doing your book shopping, please help support indie bookstores and this podcast by using my affiliate link at bookshop.com/bestbookever. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you at the library.